Hey guys, welcome to GED Math Level 1 practice test. So what we're going to do here is we have 20 questions, and so all these questions and the answer choices are in the description. So if you haven't done this already, I would take the test first, right? Then watch the video. We'll go through each of the questions, get the correct answers, and if there's any concepts you're fuzzy on, hopefully this video will help you out. Besides that, so for the GED, and I try to remember to say this before each of the practice tests for all the subjects. So if you've already heard it before, I'm sorry, but perhaps somebody hasn't. You need a score of 145 to pass each of the subject areas, right? So in this case, the subject area is math. 145 basically means about 65%. Okay, so that's the score you kind of need to be shooting for. So in 20 questions, 13 out of 20 would be 65%. So that should be kind of like your bottom line that you're looking for. And again, this is level 1. There are 4 levels. This one is actually, according to how most people score, this is the easiest of the 4. So if you're not at that 65%, don't worry about it. You get a sense of where you are. We do have a mobile app, free to install. Uh, thousands of GED questions and detailed feedback for every question, as well as the app customizes to you as you use it more. So as you use it more, we know which videos and what sort of content to send you so that you're getting better and better at being able to answer questions correctly. All right, so that's what we got going on here. So let's go ahead and get started for here. Question 1. So let me see, I need a pen. There it is. Okay, so first one is rounding. So it says round 3.7453 to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so what we want to know is that, so that we got this decimal right here, right? And so that's 7. That was supposed to be an arrow. That 7 is the tenths place. And then as we go to the right, we just keep adding to it, right? So the 7 is in the tenths place. This 4 hundredths place. We'll just say HUN for the sake of brevity. So that's hundredths place. After that is thousandths. Again, they wanted to know to the nearest hundredth, right? So this 4 is in the hundredths place. And so we should know right here is that we have 3.74, or if we round up, it's going to be either 3.74 or 3.75, right? And so when we're looking, should we round up or should we not? So immediately we know the answer is either going to be 3.74 or 3.75. So we can eliminate answer choice C and answer choice D. And what you always look to is you just go to the next digit. So we look at the very next one, that's in the thousands place in this case, right, is a 5. If that number is 5 or greater, we round up. If it's 4 or lower, we don't round up and just keep it at 3.74. But because we have a 5 here, that would mean we round up and we go to 3.75. So sometimes those take a little bit of practice, but it's just knowing where those places are, right? Those we go tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, like that. You're not gonna have to go past 10,000ths, probably not past thousands. And then you look to the very next number. If that number is 5 or larger, round up. Okay, order from least to greatest, right? And then they've got 3 fractions and 1 decimal, right, with the 0.82. So we want all of these either to make them all fractions, right, or make them all decimals, one of the two, right? And so it looks to me like this is going to be easier if you make these decimals. In that, so for example, like if you made them all decimals, you have to get out of 100, and so getting like 5 out of 6, 7 out of 9, in my opinion, easier with decimals. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so 4/5, that is 0.80. Okay, and so being able to kind of do this at least semi-quickly, right? So how did I get 4/5 equals 0.80? 4 out of 5 equals something out of 100. Okay, right? And then if we cross multiply, we get 5x equals 400. Divide both sides by 5, and we come up with 0.80. Okay, the next one, so we got 0.80, 5/6. So I'm not going to do all the math right in front of us, right? Hopefully that's something we can just do on our own. 5 out of 6 equals 0.83. Okay, then we have 0.82. And then if we divide 7 by 9, we get 0.77. Okay, so now we've ordered them, right? Smallest to largest, or we haven't ordered them yet. Now we have them all as decimals, right? So 0.77 is the smallest. That's D. Yeah, we'll cross that guy off. Okay, so D is going to be the first one. 0.80 is second. That's going to be A. Get rid of that guy. 0.82 is going to be third. That's C. And 0.83 will be last. B. DACB. Okay, answer choice B is the one that we want. And so if you want or need practice, like if doing what I just did right there is really hard, app is the best place for you, right? First, you want to be kind of comfortable with what I like the process that we went through, like why I picked changing either all to decimals or all to fractions, and then for the most case, just need practice at how to divide up those fractions. And perfect place is the app. Lots of practice questions just like this. And in the app, like this whole like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, the app is divided that way as well, right? So you have level 1 topics and you have level 2 topics and so on. Okay, is 8/10 greater than 7/8? Okay, so we have 8/10 and we have 7/8. So the denominator is that number on the bottom part of the fraction. The denominator here is an 8. Here is a 10, if I could circle it right. We need the denominator to be the same to be able to compare fractions. Okay, so to get that, we will multiply the denominators together, right? So here we have 8/10, so we'll multiply by 8 over 8, right? Whatever you do on the top, you have to do on the bottom, right? And so if I multiply times 8 over 8, then I will get 80 on the bottom, and 8 times 8 is 64 on the top. It's called the numerator. Okay, and then we'll do this. So on the bottom fraction here, we'll multiply by 10 over 10. 7 times 10 is 70. 8 times 10 is 80. Okay, now we have the denominators the same, right? They're both 80. Okay, and then it's just whichever one is bigger, which in this case 70, right, is bigger than 64. And so that means that 7/8 is greater than 8/10. And so the answer is no. Okay, same thing. A lot of times this sort of stuff just needs practice, right? If you have any doubts about what to do, all you're looking at is you look at the two denominators, the bottom part of each of the fractions. If they're not the same number, multiply those two numbers together so that we have the denominator the same. That's all we're doing. Q4, question 4. Okay, so rounding. Round 10,742,576 to the nearest 100,000. Okay, so right again, it was 10,742,000. So it's either going to be 10,700,000, right, or round up to 10,800,000. So kind of similar, which I believe it was the very first question we had, is 10 million is not it. That would be rounding down to the nearest million. 11 million also would be to the nearest million, right? So 10 and 11 we can cross out, and we know it's either 10,700,000 or 10,800,000. Okay, and so again, this is in the hundred thousands place, and so that very next digit is a 4. And so because if it was 5 or greater, we would round up to 10,800,000. But if it's 4 or less, we round down. That's always the rule with rounding. It's the next digit, and then is it round up or round down? If it's 5 or greater, we round up. 4 or less, round down. Okay, so 10,700,000. That's our answer here. Okay, so now we were multiplying and we got a negative, and then we're dividing. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with PEMDAS, right? But it shows up on this exam more than once, and it's showing up right here. PEMDAS, PEMDAS. And so that's just a phrase. The mnemonic, the phrase that we learn in school, is "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." Right? So stupid little saying, but please stands for P, excuse stands for E. And what these really stand for, though, is the order in which we do the operations. So P stands for parentheses, E is exponents, M is multiply, D is divide, A is add, S is subtract. Okay, so what that means is multiply first, then divide. Okay, 7 times -8 is -56, divided by 4, and that makes -14. So answer choice B. All right, moving on. Okay, a word problem here. Okay, so word problem. So it says a world map has a scale of 1/4 of an inch. And so I like to write this stuff out as I'm reading it. Everybody doesn't have to do it the same way. Right? So it says 1/4 of an inch is 250 miles. Okay, that was the important part of that first sentence. You measure the distance between New York and Los Angeles, and it equals 3 inches. So what is the real distance between New York and Los Angeles? Okay, so it says 1/4 of an inch is 250 miles, right? So how long is an inch, right? So if we go 1/4, if we multiply this side times, let's click that, times 4, 1/4 times 4, or 4 over 1, just equals 1. It equals 4 over 4, or 1. So we multiply by 4 on that side. And so, we'll multiply by 4 on this side. Okay, so then we have 1 inch equals 250 times 4 that we have up here, right? And 250 times 4 is 1,000. Okay, and they want us to know 3 inches, right? So now we'll multiply this by 3, and we'll multiply this 1,000 by 3, and we'll end up with 3 inches equals 3,000 miles. Okay, and somehow number 7 got stuck on here as well, but right there. Okay, we're gonna skip this one. I don't know how this one got on here, so just try to pretend that that's not there. Okay, so anyway, I don't know how that got on there, but the way that we came up with that answer was we got the 3,000. Let's move on and get that other question that shouldn't be there out of our face. Okay, now we have Mount Everest, which they say is the highest elevation in Asia, is 29,028 feet above sea level. The Dead Sea, the lowest elevation, is 1,312 feet below sea level. What is the difference between the two elevations? Right? Difference is key. Whenever we see difference, we think subtract. Right? So we start off with 29,028. That's Mount Everest. And then we go minus, and then they say the Dead Sea is 1,312 feet below sea level. So that's a negative number, right? Okay, so minus negative 1,312. Okay, and whenever we have these double negatives, that means add. Okay, double negative turns into add, and when we add these two numbers together, we end up with 30,340. Answer choice B. Right there. Okay, so that's how you do that, right? The big key is that you see difference, that means subtract. Two negatives means add, and then that's how we come up with the 30,340 feet at the end as the difference between the two. Okay, 3 over 8 equals x over 56. What do we do with that? So 3/8 equals some number out of 56, right? Okay, and so when we see something like this, that means cross multiply to solve for x. Okay, so cross multiply, so now I have 8x equals 56 times 3, and that's 168. Okay, and I'm just going to divide each side by 8 to find x. 168 divided by 8, that's 21. Okay, so we're getting a lot of answer choice B's here. X equals 21. Okay, that's all you got to do. You just got to know when you have this x and then 3 other numbers like this, and they're in 2 fractions. That means cross multiply. Okay, and then we have adding fractions here. Okay, so the big concept is common denominator, right? When we have 1/3 plus, when we're adding or subtracting fractions, the denominator has to be the same. Okay, so here we have a 3 and a 5. Okay, so in this form you cannot add or subtract fractions. Multiply and divide are different, right? But for adding and subtracting, gotta have that common denominator. So we're just gonna multiply the 3 and the 5 together, right? So we'll start with the 1/3. Right? I have 1/3, and I want to multiply by some number where the numerator and denominator are the same, like that, equals that 5/15. Okay, and then with 2/5. Okay, same kind of concept, except this time it's going to be times 3/3, right? Because I want that denominator to be 15 still. And then the 2 numerators, the 2 numbers on the top of the fractions, 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, so then we have 5/15 and 6/15. Okay, so when I want to add 5/15 plus 6/15, I can just add the 2 numerators and keep the denominator the same. Right, so that's why we wanted to get the denominators to be the same. Because so now, 5 plus 6 is 11. Denominator stays the same. There we go. That's our final answer, is 11 out of 15. All right, question 10. Okay, so conceptually, they're really the same thing. We have 2/3 minus 1/4, right? Again, easier, I think, to see it the way I write it than the way we have it written on the keyboard. 2/3 minus 1/4. So again, denominators are different, right? 3 and 4. I can't subtract these in this form. I need the denominator, the bottom part of the fraction, to be the same. So I need it to be out of 12. Okay, so we're going to go 2/3, and we're going to multiply it by 4/4. Okay, and that will be 4 times 2 is 8. So 4 times 3 is 12. That gives me 8/12 minus. So with the 1/4, we're going to multiply it by 3/3. And that's going to equal 1 times 3 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12. Now I can subtract, right? So now, right, with the previous question, it was add. This one it's subtract. Denominator stays the same, still 12. 8 minus 3 is 5. And there we go. 5/12 is our answer. Okay, we are halfway home, guys, for this level 1 practice test. So a teacher gives a math test for 25 points, 6 questions. Each question is weighted equally. How many points is each question worth? Okay. So we start off, we have 25 points on the exam, right? So we'll start with that. And there's going to be 6 questions, right? That's all they're asking you to do there. There's 6 questions. How many are each of them worth, right? Or You could do it a different way if you prefer, right? Same process. We have 6 questions. I don't know how many each of them are worth. We'll say that's x equals 25, right? And then to solve this, got to get rid of that 6. Got to get rid of that 6. Okay. This and this are exactly the same, right? 25 divided by 6 is the process you need to get to. And when you divide 25 by 6, you get 4.25 or 4.25 for answer choice D. What type of graph is best for comparing different groups or categories? Okay, so we're getting into different types of graphs here, yeah? Okay, and so your answer there is going to be bar graph. Answer choice B. And let's go over each of these just briefly here. Okay, so for a bar graph, we have different groups. So in a bar graph, it'll be something like, see, it'll look like this and that, that. And so you're comparing different groups. And so, right, and then over here you have like numbers. So it might be a percentage or it might be a revenue number or whatever. Okay, and so it'd be something like, yeah, here's some product that people buy. Like say it's a smartphone, it's an iPhone, right? So people in their 20s, buy it this much. People in their 30s, they buy it more. People 40s and up buy it less than either of the groups. So you're just comparing these groups. So in this case, the groups are age. That would be very common. Okay, so that's what you'd see in a bar graph. So we would like to know what it looks like, but it's more important to know that we're comparing different groups, like ages in this example. Okay, so we'll go through each of these examples here. Let's get rid of this one. So that was bar graph, which was our actual answer. Okay, what was next? Pie chart. Okay, so with a pie chart is we're looking at parts of a whole. Okay, and so let's say it's like monthly expenses for you. Okay, and so all right, rent is 40%, let's say. Okay, so we'll say that's 40. And food, we'll say is 35, right? So these are all in percentages, right? This is not all; these are not actual revenue numbers or dollar signs or anything like that. Just a percent. Food, right? And then whatever. What do you got left? I got 40 plus 35 is 75. 25 on extra stuff, right? And so that's what a pie chart looks like. And we're just the main thing, the phrase you want to be familiar with is that it's parts of a whole, right? And so if it says which type of graph compares parts of a whole, that would be a pie chart. And then finally, line graph. Line graph will be comparing over like a period of time. So like say you're a business, right? And so businesses, big businesses at least, report they have to report revenue and their financials quarterly, right? So that's where you see like Q1, Q2, Q3, okay, right? And so whatever, like, and then you say it's revenue. So we were here in Q1, and then we were here in Q2, now we're back down here in Q3, something like that, right? So that's over a period of time, right? And that's different than like the bar graph where we were comparing groups. Here we're comparing time periods. Okay, so that was a lot for this question, but hopefully all that stuff makes sense. If not, let me know in the comments. We'll get back to you and try to make it easier. Okay. 4 friends went bowling. Their mean score was 115 points. All right, we need to know that mean is the same thing as average, if that helps you. The first 3 friends rolled a 108, 110, 112. What was the 4th friend's score? Okay. So they say the mean was 115, and there's 4 of them, right? So 115 times 4 is going to be their total points. So 115 times 4 is 460. Okay, so that's how many points they got total. Now we have 108, plus 110 plus 112. And then the fourth number we don't know, right? So we just call that x equals that total. Okay, and that's how we set it up. So if we add up 108, 110, and 112, we get 330. Okay, so 330 plus x, some number we don't know, whatever this person has to get, equals 460. Right? And again, that 460 total is because the average score was 115. Okay, and there were 4 people, right? So if we multiply the 115 times the 4 people, then we get the score that all of them got together. Okay, so anyway, so when you subtract 330 from both sides to get x by itself, we end up with x equals 460 minus 330. X is 130. Answer choice D is the one we want. Okay, for number 1,364, what number is in the tens column? Okay, so back kind of like at the very beginning of this practice test, we did tenths, like THS, hundredths, THS, and that was with a decimal. Okay, and this one though is asking for tens column. So the way this one goes is we go right to left. Okay, so this 4, that's the ones. This 6 right here, that's going to be the tens column. Okay, and then from there, the 3 is the hundreds column, right? As in 364. That's within the hundreds column. The 1 will be in the thousands column, right? It's 1,364. That 1 represents thousands. Okay, so they wanted to know tens, so that number is going to be right there. That's 6. Answer choice C for question number 14. Moving on. 15. Lindsay averaged riding 50 miles per month on her bike. 50 miles per month over the last 4 months. Okay. In the previous 3 months, she rode 25, 40, and 65 miles. How many miles did she ride last month? Okay, so we did this question kind of similar to this just a couple questions ago. So it says, right, went 50 miles per month over 4 months, right? Okay, so first of all, how many miles has she ridden total over the 4 months? So we just multiply that 50 by 4. So she's gone 200. Okay, and then they tell us how far she's gone the last 3 months, and then they're asking for the final month. Okay, so it's very similar like to the bowling question. That's the question that it was. Okay, so we know the number is going to equal 200, right? We've got 3 numbers that we're going to add together, and then a 4th number, which again we're just going to call x, but it could be any variable, like any letter. So we got 25, we got 40, got 65. We got an unknown here at the end equals the 200 miles over the 4 months, right? Okay, so if we add up 25, 40, and 65, we get 130. Okay, so this is 130 plus x equals 200. Okay, and then from there, we just are going to subtract 130 from each side to get x by itself. 200 minus, so that just looks like this, right? Just going to do that. And we're going to do this. 200 minus 130 equals 70 miles. Okay, so she needs to ride 70 miles here in this last month to get to the total of 200 and average 50 miles per month. All right. Okay, negative 17 plus 5. So if these are confusing, let's look at a number line. If it's not confusing, then just humor me for a second before we move on to the next one. Okay, negative 17. Okay, so on a number line, right? So it just keeps going like that, like that. in each direction. Essentially what you have is, so negative 17 minus 1 is negative 18. Okay, so plus 1 is negative 16. All right, and then we just keep going in that direction, right? So negative 17 minus 2 would keep going this way. It would be negative 19. And then if we sort of count it off, it would keep going that way forever. Now, the question is negative 17 plus 5, right? So we're going 5 in that direction, right? And so if you just sort of just count that off, negative 17, and then we go 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. And remember, we're still in negatives here, right? That gets us to negative 12. So a lot of times the number line helps us to visualize with these negatives. Okay, and then on this one, so if you have both the numbers are negative, we have an easier way to do this than the number line. So that's negative 190 plus negative 185, right? So it's addition, but it's two negatives. So if you're adding two negatives together, just add them like as if it didn't have a negative, and then just throw a negative on the end, right? So just do this. 190 plus 185, add them up, right? So 5 plus 0 is 5, 9 plus 8 is 17, carry the 1, 375, but because you have the two negatives, just throw a negative on there, and so our answer is negative 375, answer choice A. So it might take doing a few practice ones to get comfortable and trust that that's correct, but it'll be correct every time. If you have one negative and one positive, which happened here, right? We had a negative 17, but it just said plus 5. It didn't say plus negative 5. Then you have to think about doing it different. But when you add two negatives, just add them as if they weren't a negative, throw a negative on there at the end. You're good to go. Okay, we did a problem similar to this at the beginning. So we're multiplying, we've got two negatives, we actually got all negatives, and then we divide. Okay, you remember PEMDAS? Well, we talked about that. It's one of the first questions, right? And that PEMDAS stands for parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract, right? So multiply is first, then divide is next. Okay, so we go negative 9 times negative 7. Hopefully know that 9 times 7 is 63. And we have two negatives here. So when we multiply two negatives together, two negatives makes a positive. Okay, so we have 63 divided by negative 3. And one positive, so it's plus 63 or just 63. One positive, one negative. When it's a positive and a negative, the result is a negative. 63 divided by 3 is 21. We end up with negative 21. Okay, absolute value. I believe these last two are absolute value. Okay, so do what's inside the absolute value first. So we'll just carry this negative 3 over here. And then absolute value of negative 6 plus 8 is 2. Okay, we're now done with the absolute value, and then we just multiply. So we have our 2, multiply it times negative 3, end up with negative 6. Fairly straightforward there. Nothing too hard, hopefully. And then this one looks a little trickier, right? So anything that we have within an absolute value, we need to make it positive. Now on this one, we didn't have to do anything because once we added negative 6 plus 8, it was already that positive 2. Then we just multiplied them, right? Okay, so in this one, so we got negative on the outside of the absolute value, and then we have negative 12 inside. So we just make that 12. Okay, whatever's inside that absolute value sign always becomes positive, and then minus 12, right? Okay, so now we've got it within the absolute value, we've got it positive. Once we have that, we can just take that absolute value sign off. Then we have negative 12 minus 12 equals, go away, equals negative 24. Answer choice D. Okay, and if anything that I just did there is confusing, is we do have like a longer video just on absolute value that goes over a bunch of the stuff in detail. You can find that in the description below all the questions, as well as other videos that connect to specific topics. So if there are specific questions or concepts that confused you, maybe look at those videos, right? So those, they're not really long videos. They tend to be, I don't know, somewhere between 5 minutes, most of them are around 5 minutes to at the very most maybe 10 minutes for a couple of them. Right, so they're shorter videos, but go over a few examples of anything that threw you off. So that might be useful. I think I've said this already, but if you have any questions, on things that don't make sense, just leave a comment, and we will get back to you and hopefully be able to provide you with something that makes it easier to get through this. So having said all of that, this is the end of the level 1 practice test video. Hope that helped you out. Check out the app, free to install, great place to get a lot of practice, and I will see you on the next video.